everybody, and welcome back to Confessions of an IT Business Owner podcast. We are so excited that you're joining us today again. My name is Taylor Thorson, Channel Logistics Manager here at ConnectBooster, and again, have the privilege of introducing Ryan Goodman right here, ConnectBooster President and podcast host.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to today's episode, and I think you guys should too. We are bringing back Rayanne from ABC Solutions onto the podcast.
Yes, yeah, she was great. I did a little bit of the pre-interview questions with her.
Right.
You know, we had a lot to talk about. Anything from finance, Autotask Consulting, everything with the government going on right now, kind of with the stimulus checks. So
you guys talked about the PPP loans and that next round of funding. So a lot to talk about there.
Absolutely.
Action-packed episode.
Enjoy.
Rayanne, hello again. Thank you for being on the show. I know we had the chance to get together. Was that Q3 already? Man, time flies just so fast.
Can you really believe that it's been that long already? I mean, I don't even know what happened to last year other than, it was a crazy year, but it seemed to fly and take 3 years all at the same time. I don't even know.
I heard someone say that it was actually on the news. It was a public official saying this was the longest year and fastest year, 2020, that they ever feel they experienced, and they don't really know how to feel about it. I equate it to, I don't want to admit this, but I'm just going to say it. Have you ever ended up in your driveway from a drive from work to home, and you're like, how am I in the driveway right now? And I don't remember the last 15 minutes. I hope I stopped at all the stoplights because I'm not really sure what happened.
I hate to admit that, yes, that's happened to me too. It's like you're in a fugue state, right? You get in your car and then the next thing you know, boom, you're at home.
You're just on autopilot. I should sell that to Tesla. Well, again, thanks again for being back on the show. Last time we talked about a wide range of topics. This time, we had narrowed in on a couple of things, specifically around Autotask, PSA and some of the consulting that you do. So I definitely want to touch in on that and hone on that and get your expertise, opinions, as well as let the viewers know all the things that you do inside of that world. As far as finance, we were still going into the tail end of what I would say is uncertainty, trying to figure out what 2020 was gonna end like. There were a lot of things with stimulus money. I know that I just saw Biden just signed this next round of public stimulus money, and checks are supposed to be hitting bank accounts here over the next few days. But anything, I think we had that second round of PPP loans as well since the last time we had talked. Anything interesting from a funding finance world that you want to touch on before we dig into the PSA stuff?
So, like you said, it's probably been 6 months since we talked, right? And so, so much has happened. And of course, we had the second round of stimulus that came out on December 27th, and that was signed into law, and that kicked out a second round of PPP loans. And for anybody who hasn't gotten the first loan, can now apply for their first PPP loan using the first round rules, as long as they didn't already receive the money. But if you did receive PPP money and you want to try a second one for a second round, there are some restrictions, And so back in December, the government sent out another round of stimulus checks. They opened up that second round of the PPP loans, and of course, the new president was not about to be outdone, so he had to come out with his own stimulus package, and that, like you said, was just passed. So $1.9 trillion, but this round is really more geared toward sending that money exactly where it needs to go, right? The first CARES Act was a huge money grab. Literally everybody in the country was, grabbing for free government money. Because it was available, why not? But so the second round was more kind of targeted toward the unemployment and still again the small business. And now this round is really going to be more towards the individuals, the unemployed, and the seriously hard hit companies. Also, vaccine distribution.
Yeah.
That's where a large majority of the money is going to go, is towards the vaccine distribution. There's a couple of fun, interesting things. There was, the unemployment benefits were extended to September 6th. But the interesting thing is that if you did receive unemployment benefits in 2020, the first $10,200 are tax-free. So you don't actually have to pay tax on that, on your income taxes for 2020. So if you haven't filed your tax returns yet, hang on just for a few more minutes,
Okay.
And then you can get that through. So but that's, and there's some other things for, child tax credits and stuff like that, that came out in the new bill.
That's great insight, number one. The other thing I wanted to touch on, because I'm speaking way above my pay grade here, so I'd love your insight on it to make sure that fact check me, okay? That's what I'm asking you to do.
I'll do my best.
Fact check me on this. In the December round, I believe it was debated back and forth, if that hadn't passed, that the original first round of PPP loans could have been deemed as taxable income, but then that second round, for businesses, but that second round waived that. Am I thinking about that right? And is that what happened?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I probably should have mentioned it. So, up until December, when Congress finally got together and said, hey, wait a minute, we did not mean for this stuff to be taxable.
Right.
And so literally it took an act of Congress to reverse that. And they had to state specifically that forgiven PPP loan funds are not taxable. The deductions or the expenses that you use to pay that money to pay, like payroll and rent and things, if they would be normally deductible on any other year, they are still deductible now. So you get to deduct the expenses. You don't have to pay tax on the forgiven debt. And also the EIDL advances also are tax-free. And so they're called, they're what's called an M2 adjustment on corporate tax returns.
Okay.
So it increases your book net income, but not your taxable net income.
That makes sense. I appreciate the clarity there, and thanks again for the insight. I felt like I maybe knew enough just to be dangerous. Didn't want to give bad advice. Didn't want to throw the wrong thing out there. So cool. Well, I'm going to shift gears on you a little bit.
Okay.
In addition to obviously all of the work that you're doing for MSPs and other service-based businesses in accounting and finance, you do an awful lot of consulting, and specifically in the Autotask, PSA space. I know you have some great relationships around there and worked with, a lot of partners to help them streamline their process. And so to start things off, what led you to begin to offer that type of support as a financial professional? That's
such an interesting question. And it's one of those ever evolving things. I started off helping MSPs back in 2006. Autotask was pretty new to the market, and they'd only been out a few years. And then they started this integration with QuickBooks Desktop. So I started helping some MSPs connect Autotask to QuickBooks. And but in order to make the information map properly to the P&L, and get the invoices to hit the right revenue accounts, I had to understand the services. And if I was going to understand the services, I first needed to understand the contracts and how that affected invoicing. And since I was in there, I figured, well, I may as well understand procurement and purchasing and purchase orders and stuff. So I started digging into that, and I kind of put the whole thing together. Well, at that point, it didn't make sense to stop.
Yeah.
So so I kind of expanded that, and into like the CRM and the quoting and the projects. And, before I knew it, I had a solid understanding of the entire system.
Yeah.
And as that was happening, then I started meeting up with the Autotask people. This was before Bob Godgart, sold Autotask.
Yeah.
And so I started doing, some speaking for them at Autotask Community Live. And then I started meeting up with, more and more people, and helping them with their accounting systems. So the thing just kind of evolved all by itself. It wasn't, maybe I did set out to do it. It's all right. I shouldn't say that it happened by accident, because it really did not. I was speaking with Harry Brelsford one day, and, and he said, and we were just chit-chatting or whatever. And I said, Harry, I would love it if you could get me an introduction to somebody at Autotask. I've got this great idea rattling around in my head, and I want to talk to somebody over there. 2 days later, I get a phone call from Harry, and he's connecting me with Bob Godgart and
awesome.
And Lenny DiCostanzo.
Yeah.
And, we're having this whole conversation. And, so it just kind of kept going in that direction.
That's crazy. It is one of those things where oftentimes you don't get to just crack the door open with your toe. Sometimes the wind catches it, and there it is. It's wide open now. Here we go.
So to this day, I still credit Harry Brelsford for the introduction to Autotask.
Oh, that's awesome. Go Harry. He's a great guy. So as you are you specifically focused around finance in the majority of your engagements, or do a lot of times people are coming and just say, I need help with configuration, I need to get my service delivery under control, and utilizing Autotask to streamline it,
Yeah, so that's I guess that's one of those things that people probably misunderstand about me. They think, oh, she's just an accountant, she only understands the numbers in QuickBooks, right?
Yeah.
But that's really not so. And so I have a podcast. I'm the co-host of a podcast called PSA Impact. And we talk about everything PSA. And we tend to, tailor our conversations more toward Autotask, because my co-host and I were both Autotask consultants.
Yeah.
And we, so we really deep dive into all of the different things that Autotask does, and how we, how we work with our clients in helping them get their Autotask set up, optimizing their service delivery, integrating quoting tools on the front end, and then of course RMM's got to come in, and that's the middle piece, and then the accounting piece at the, the back end, because you kind of need all of these pieces in order to really get a full, a full system, right? Because the quoting happens at the front end, but you still need that quote to come into Autotask so that you can track the opportunity, track the items that you're selling, invoice the items. And Autotask is not an accounting system, so you absolutely need one of those, right? And and then of course documentation. As a matter of fact, we just started using the Autotask documentation manager in our own company.
Okay.
And so we were using a third-party documentation tool, and we just started using the documentation manager. I hope they spend some time and really improve upon that.
I was going to say, I would imagine, once you're in, you're making a checklist, because, understanding the history, you've even had some tight relationships with the development team over the years, and have been able to, be an advocate for partners in areas where, product needed to improve. So.
Yeah, I really value my relationship with the development team at Autotask. I know that if I get really stuck on something, I can reach out to somebody there.
Yeah.
And they know that if they get really stuck on something, they know that they can reach out to me. And so it's been a great relationship.
That's awesome. I know, from a ConnectBooster standpoint, we've certainly appreciate the relationship with you as well as with Autotask in those times where it's like, hey, we've got to figure something out here. It's been
Oh,
good to
I
have those
love my
relationships.
ConnectBooster people. You guys are great.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
So,
that.
yeah, and anything that I can do to help you guys ever, whether it's in Autotask or QuickBooks, but I think you got the QuickBooks thing all down. So,
Well, I know our team is always talk to Rayanne. Someone needs to talk to Rayanne. She will help that partner figure it out. So trust me, the feeling is definitely mutual. Now we've talked a lot about the integrations to make a PSA, the bolt-on pieces that are there to really make a 360-degree complete workflow from quote implementation, ticketing, project management, all the way through to receiving payment and then that flowing out and being recorded inside of accounting. If I back us up just one step, how important is it for an MSP to understand their workflow and processes before they get involved with the PSA? I mean, even on our side, we run into partners that are in a different phase of maybe I would call it operational maturity, in the tools that they're using and inside of their business. What are some of the big things that you are advising on pre-PSA implementation for that partner to understand you need to have some of these things figured out before you just jump in the pool deep end?
I wish that people would ask me that question before they go out and open up a PSA or sign, and I've been working recently with this one gentleman, and he's out of New York City, and literally he decided on first he was listening to different podcasts and things, and he knew that he needed to get a PSA in order to move to the next level in his business.
Right.
But he wasn't sure which one he wanted or why or how to implement it. Mm-hmm. And this was a man who did all sorts of homework before, he implemented it. And now that I think about it, there's another gentleman I'm working with, down in the Miami area, same thing, and sometimes people can, and I call it analysis paralysis, right? They analyze these things to death, and they are so afraid of making the wrong decision, they don't make any.
Sure.
So that, and that can happen, but you really do, it would be really great if you had at least a design, hopefully on a piece of paper, but if not, at least in your head, as to how you want things to flow. Because when you're setting up Autotask for the first time, it's so overwhelming. What's a work type? Sure. What's a role? Why do I need both? And then what happens? And how many queues do I need? There's 3 people in the company. You don't need 20 queues. You don't even need 1 queue for each person.
Sure.
So, is there a defined set of rules, in order to manage your service desk? And the number one mistake I see MSPs make time after time is they buy Autotask and they start immediately running tickets, and they don't bother taking the time to understand the entire process, the entire system. Yes, it's a ticketing system, absolutely, but it's so much more than that. And if you skip the important parts and jump straight to the ticketing, then it becomes that much harder to clean it up later down the road when you're trying to, okay, now, hey, I'm really an MSP. Now I've got to get at these contracts and these projects and get these things working and get these workflow rules moving. It just becomes a lot harder to do it backwards.
That makes sense. So my suggestion, I'm just going to give you a plug, unashamed plug. If you're in that phase, give Ryan a quick call before
just
you
a
go.
Quick call, really. Yeah. I'm not going to try and sell anybody, anything that you don't want. But I'll give you at least a roadmap, or even better, right now on PSA Impact, we are doing a complete Autotask implementation series,
That's great.
from beginning to end. And, we start off, doing the back office things, setting up, Autotask from the back end. And then we move, then we move on into the CRM, and then the contracts, and I think we've just started hitting the service desk, and we're probably 10 or 15 episodes in. So service desk is, towards the end of the line.
That's great.
Just saying.
Yeah. Hey guys, here with a quick break from our show to remind you to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening. If you have suggestions for future episodes, or you want to be a guest on the podcast, email us at podcast@connectbooster.com, or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll be sure to point you in the right direction. Lastly, to find out more about our guests, check out their information in the podcast description. Thanks for listening to the Confessions of an IT Business Owner. Let's get back to the show. We're obviously talking tools. A lot of times, I keep these interviews pretty generalized, but what you do is specific. What we do is pretty specific. So one of the questions I wanted to ask, because I know in the past, you've done a lot of work with different payments integrations. I know you've had recommendations with Bill.com. They're a huge publicly traded payments company. They're integrated with QuickBooks, and there's a lot of great things, about that tool. One of the things that we had seen in the market when we were first solving some of our own problems that we had in our point of sale business, we kind of thought about, we need to integrate to the tools and the ecosystem of tools that people in our industry use, right? So we were looking to the PSA tools, we were looking to the quoting tools. What are a couple of the uniques where when you have a client utilizing Autotask, QuickBooks, whatever flavor of QuickBooks that is, and ConnectBooster, what are some of the efficiencies that the partner is going to receive by using that ecosystem set of tools together?
So, wow, great question. And you're right, we were advocates of Bill.com for a long time, and we still use it, but we use it more on the accounts payable side than we do on the accounts receivable side. We found that the accounts receivable, having Bill.com manage accounts receivable just doesn't work, because Bill.com requires that Bill.com owns accounts receivable.
Sure.
So, so if you're sending everything out through Bill.com, and the customer mails you a check, you're supposed to go into Bill.com and record the check in Bill.com. And that's a piece that everybody misses. Yeah. They think, oh, well, let me just, record this payment right in my QuickBooks and deposit the check, and everything's great. Everything's great until the next sync, and everything blows up.
Creates issues.
Yeah. And the automation tool in Bill.com did not work as well as, as it should. So we started looking a lot more at ConnectBooster, because ConnectBooster just works, right? So some of the features that attracted us to Bill.com, like the automated late notices, the automated payments, the sync back to QuickBooks, ConnectBooster does that natively, and and it has just made such a difference in our clients' businesses. And every time I'm talking with a client that's been using it, or if I'm talking to a new client or a prospective client that's already using it, I say, oh, how's that working for you? Oh, I love it. Literally, everybody says, oh, this is the best thing that I've ever done for my business, and so many times I hear people kind of groan, oh, but ConnectBooster is so expensive.
Sure.
But it's not, because one of the things that you do that nobody else really seems to do well at all is the ability to add back in the credit card fees.
Yeah.
And And that is not something, QuickBooks can't do that. You've got to set up a separate line item on the invoice for that.
Right.
Bill.com won't do it. Late fee manager won't do it. So, and that's a huge piece because, one thing that keeps people from even collecting money using credit cards is that fee.
Yeah.
Everybody shies away from that 3% fee, but if they can bill it back, or let the customer make the decision, hey, I'm going to pay this with an ACH for free, or am I willing to pay this this premium for the credit card so that I can still get my airline points, so and I think that's probably that's been one of the main deal breakers for years, and you guys solved it.
No, I appreciate that. I know, even for listeners, this is a little bit different format than maybe many of you used to talking, tool specific. But I also, want to make sure that, people understand in these scenarios, there are a lot of different choices out there in the world. There are a lot of different consultants, people could use. But we've just found some really efficient ways to work with the tools. We found some, just like Rayanne, some really efficient ways to operate a service-based business, and I'm a huge fan of modeling things that work in our own business, in our own life, and I hate to see when partners struggle over some of these things in business operation when really they could be solved pretty simply through the expertise of people inside of their networks. And then, the real challenge is like get out to market and continue to have excellent service, and then and drive more deals and drive more business into your organization, because that's where success is going to find you is creating the revenue and then taking care of that revenue and being exceptional in your service model.
Right. Yeah, no. And I know that this is, your podcaster is really not for me to sit here and say, wow, ConnectBooster is, all that in a bag of chips, right? But it's but I have not found, and believe me, Ryan, I look on a fairly regular basis, for new technologies that come out, to make our life easier and to make the lives of our clients, easier. And I haven't found it. And I just, first of all, I think your support rocks. Your salespeople are super responsive, and I haven't found anything that I don't like about dealing with ConnectBooster. But that's the end of that. So
yeah, no, that's great.
That's the end of my soapbox.
All good. I teed you up. That's so. Sorry, everyone. We apologize. I'm just kidding. So what are some of the other benefits that you see partners getting from engaging in consulting? And hey, I'm not, talking, specific, and we'll even, keep it general from outside of, hey, what does Rayanne provide? But there's an ecosystem of relationships when you're talking to a consultant. There's an ecosystem of tools that consultants know work or don't work, and things to avoid. And I'd love to just, chat a little bit on those lines. Some of those other, I wouldn't even call them fringe benefits because they're really direct benefits, but it moves beyond oftentimes just the single thing that maybe they would be coming to you to fix,
So I get such a wide range of requests. Like, here's a perfect example. One day, and I'm not on Reddit a great deal, but and those who are on Reddit probably have seen me, popping around the MSP or Autotask boards. But somebody came into the MSP board, and he had just taken over as CEO of this company, and they were using Autotask for 3 or 4 years, and nobody in the company really understood how to use it. Certainly not him. And he's been charged with trying to get this company to work efficiently.
Yeah.
And I had no idea where to start. So I started a conversation with them, on Reddit. And then he called, and we've been working together now probably 2 months. We meet once a week, and every week they bring me a new problem. Like last week they want to create commission reports.
Sure.
They want to figure out how they can, run a simple report. Right now it's done in like 5 different spreadsheets and blah, 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 and they want to try and automate that. A few weeks ago, it was quoting, and a few weeks before that, it was purchase orders, and a few weeks before that, it was workflow rules. So they come at me with all of these different, all of these different requests, and it's really about where they are, and somebody that understands the entire process, and not just somebody that knows this much. I can help you if you're right in here, but if you're out here, I'm sorry, you're on your own. But and they were looking at a quoting tool, and I think they were looking at Quoter, and I said, I'm starting to hear more and more about Quoter, and I don't know very much about it, and I know that there's also ConnectBooster that used to be called Quozal, but I don't know very much about that. And but I'll tell you, the one that I do know more about is QuoteWorks, because I've been using QuoteWorks for a number of years and helping people implement it. I did not intend to sell them QuoteWorks. It just, it happened to be the tool that I already knew and I could help them with and get it implemented in. And so they decided that was probably the better way for them to go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It just kind of turns out that way. And I don't recommend one RMM tool over another. I don't recommend, one documentation over another. It just, there are some of them that I know and I know well, and there are some that I don't.
Yeah,
so,
totally fair.
And that's why we have more than one consultant in the world.
Yeah, exactly, right. Oh, that's great. Couple of big takeaways that I want to make sure people call out and recall. PSA Impact. Did I get that right? That's your podcast, right? Okay, so go check that out, because you're going to learn a lot of information. Like Rayanne just said, they're working through the process of a full Autotask implementation series. So that obviously sounds very interesting, especially if you were interested in listening to this episode. I know you're going to be really interested to go check that out. So go check that out. And before we wrap up, again, I want to just do a recap and thank you again for your insight and expertise, in finance. What's going on with this round of stimulus and the piece that we had that happened between the last time we had talked. So really appreciate that insight. Some of the tax changes and implications that you've seen come down the line. You're in the midst of right now. I think we were just talking. We're in corporate tax week, literally right now, and
I'm trying to hide all of the papers behind me, and because the corporate tax deadline is like tomorrow, and so yes, but I really want to thank you for having me on again. I always enjoy our conversations, and and I do appreciate the opportunity to get the word out to MSPs. If there's anything that I can do to help, I'm always available to help, even during tax season.
Yeah,
most of the time.
I appreciate you taking time, especially out of this busy time. And again, if you guys have questions about anything related to PSA consulting, Autotask, finance in general, please reach out to Rayanne. She has served our partners so well. I want to make that unabashed recommendation. So you have a wonderful weekend. We're talking on a Friday. I know that probably doesn't mean much during tax season, but try to at least enjoy a little bit of it. And looking forward to seeing you the next time, either on the podcast virtually, or fingers crossed we get to have some on-site engagement.
I would love
soon
that.
enough.
So yes, we definitely need an in-person meeting one of these days. Hopefully sometime this year.
Sounds great. Take care, Rayanne. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Well, that was a lot of great information.
Absolutely.
one of the things I really appreciate, and I think everyone listening who's a business owner, the PPP loan money is non-taxable
Right.
for 2020.
Good news for us.
A huge deal, yes. I also really appreciated the fact that she described a lot of what she does inside of her business, not just financial consulting, in tying that to the PSA tool, but really overall configuration and planning prior to using a PSA
And
tool.
actually utilizing it, right? Not just leaving it there.
You're exactly right.
Well, awesome. With all of that being said, thanks for tuning in, and be on the lookout for our next episode. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.